vocpodcasts.com.
Red Dwarf 3, The Saga Continuums. The story so far. 3 million years in the future, Dave Lister, the last human being alive, discovers he is pregnant after a liaison with his female self in a parallel universe. His pregnancy concludes with the successful delivery of twin boys, Jim and Bexley. However, because the twins were conceived in another universe with different physical laws, they suffer from highly accelerated growth rates and are both 18 years old within 3 days of being born. In order to save their lives, Lister returns them to the universe of their origin, where they are reunited with their father, a woman, and are able to lead comparatively normal lives. Well, as normal as you can be if you've been born in a parallel universe and your father's a woman and your mother's a man, and you're 18 years, 3 days after your birth. Shortly afterwards, Crichton, the service mechanoid who had left the ship after being rescued from his own crashed vessel, the Nova 5, is found in pieces after his spacebike crash lands onto an asteroid. Lister rebuilds the Noid, but is unable to recapture his former personality. Meanwhile, Holly, the increasingly erratic Red Dwarf computer, performs a head sex change operation on himself. He bases his new face on Hilly, a female computer with whom he'd once fallen madly in love. And now, the saga continuums. Red Dwarf 3, the same generation, nearly. This is an SOS distress call from the mining ship Red Dwarf. The crew is dead, killed by a radiation leak. Luckily, video records of the survivors' attempts to return to Earth still exist. These blokes, Brent and Paul, are ready to tell you all about them. You're listening to Tongue Tied, a Red Dwarf podcast. Stand by for comment and analysis on your favorite episodes of Red Dwarf.
Go, Benny.
Featuring
Boys from the Dwarf,
Brent Johnson.
Hey, smaghead.
And Paul Towsley.
Better make myself look big.
And now, from the drive room, the boys from the Dwarf.
Look out there! The slime's coming home!
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Tongue Tied, a Red Dwarf podcast. I'm Brent.
And I'm Paul, and the special guest this month is Adolf Hitler as himself. This is our third episode, and we'll be discussing Series 3 of Red Dwarf, which aired from November 14th through December 19th, 1989. The stories in this season are Backwards, Marooned, Polymorph, Body Swap, Time Slides, and The Last Day.
So how have you been this month, man?
Working real hard. I've had a busy month. I just finished up a show. I played a show at the National Technical Institute for the Deaf. And it was quite an interesting experience because each cast member of the show was double cast, one with someone who was doing sign language and another who was actually singing and speaking the role. And it was very cool because some of the people played off of each other. So it wasn't like there were two shows going on simultaneously. It was like just a bunch of extra people on stage, and they were, extra cast members that, belonged there and interacted with each other, and it was kind of fun. So I've played lots of theater shows, and this one was definitely very special. It was a presentation of Damn Yankees, which is all about baseball.
Or a rock group from the early 90s.
Yeah, you like early 90s rock groups. Have you ever seen Damn Yankees?
I've seen them twice.
All right.
Yeah, awesome.
What have you been up to?
I took a trip over to right beside my son's college and met this guy named Paul Towsley that decided to come down and visit North Carolina.
That's right. I went on vacation down in the South at the end of February and happened to be going to the exact same city where Brent lives. And we met up at a place called Tyler's. And I was already completely drunk when I showed up. So I hope that showed.
You hit it very well, I must say.
That's total BS. I'm sure I didn't. But we'll see. There is audio from this particular event because my friend Rick from the Paul Towsley show called us, and we recorded a pseudo podcast while we were drinking at this bar. And one day it will be released, and hopefully we can share it with everybody. The meeting of the boys from the Dwarf.
And the extra crew members who were there. 3 of your buddies.
Yeah, and Dylan is actually the one that introduced me to Red Dwarf, and it's going to be with one of the first episodes that we're going to be talking about here. It's actually the first episode of Series 3, Backwards.
So yeah, there's I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but there was a series in the mid-70s, I think it was 75, 76, 77, called Survivors. It's a UK series, and it has like lots of, not really any of the main stars, but lots of the guest stars are from Doctor Who. It's written and created by Terry Nation. And there are a lot of directors on there, Pennant Roberts, different directors and writers from Doctor Who, Terrence Dudley. His daughter actually plays on there too. And in fact, in the second and third season, do you remember Image of the Fendal?
Oh, yeah.
Have you seen that? Okay. You remember Dr. Fendelman? Dennis Lill, I think was his name. Well, he's the main star in series 2 and 3. It's a pretty good show. It's a little slow. It's basically about a virus that wipes out like 95% of the entire world population. And it's about the people that were somehow immune to it and lived, and how they recreate their society and everything. It's a drama, but it's pretty decent. Netflix has it in the mail part, not the streaming part.
Oh, so you can get it on DVD.
Right. They did a remake in 2008, and that's on streaming. But I haven't watched that yet. I wanted to watch the old one first.
So you started watching it and obviously got hooked, and now you're all in.
Yeah, just started series 3, so it's slow, but it's good. I mean, it's interesting. It's not boring, but it is slow. But what's weird is that you'll have an episode that'll be like really slow, like a bunch of talking and a bunch of politics, and you know how these people want to structure everything and get along. And then the next episode will be like action packed. It's really weird. It's as far as a series goes, it's sort of uneven. But I was watching one from series 2 the other day, and lo and behold, as soon as it comes on, Patrick Troughton walks in.
Nice.
I was like, what? I had no idea he was on there. And, well, he's only in the first scene because he gets killed immediately.
Oh, so he's just an extra then.
Yeah, basically. Just a guest appearance. Anyway, if anybody wants to check that out, it's pretty decent.
Yeah, that's cool. I was actually watching late 90s or maybe even early 90s sci-fi film called The Fifth Element, and was just checking it out, showing the girlfriend for the first time. And we get to the scene with the cops at McDonald's, and they're ordering food. And hey, who's in the driver's seat but Captain Hollister?
Cool.
Yeah, so he was a very small part in the police chase scene. And there's another little Doctor Who cameo from someone from on the ship as the guy in the Planet of the Dead, Malcolm, that sets up the time distortion thing so that David Tennant can get back to Earth. That same dude is another one of the very minor roles in that film.
Lee Evans is it?
Yeah.
Oh, he's funny.
He is.
Very funny. All right, you want to get started here this week?
Well, first up for Series 3, we have Backwards.
Remember, we don't belong here. This place is crazy.
Crazy? Death, disease, famine. There's none of that here.
There's no crime. The first night we were here, a mugger jumped us and forced 50 pounds into my wallet at knife point.
Okay, but look at the flip side of the coin. It's not all good. Take someone like, say, St. Francis of Assisi. In this universe, he's the petty-minded little sadist that goes around maiming small animals. Or Santa Claus. What a bastard. Well, he's just a big fat git who sneaks down chimneys and steals all the kids' favourite toys.
Which aired November 14th, 1989, written by Rob Grant and Doug Naylor, and directed by Ed Bye. Lister and the Cat search for Rimmer and Crichton, who've crash-landed on a world where everything, including time itself, runs backward. Or to put it another way, this was my first episode of Red Dwarf. And up until now, I have to say this is still my favorite episode of Red Dwarf. So I'm looking forward to digesting the rest of the series very thoroughly and comparing every other episode that I watch from this time forward to this one to see, what I like and what I don't like and all that kind of stuff. And the first thing that we see with the opening titles of this particular episode is just a huge jump in the production value of the whole series.
Mm-hmm.
So lots more special effects. There's new model spaceships, a new set for the cockpit of the Starbug, and even a new bunk.
Yesterday, I was checking out like the second disc in the set and all the behind the scenes stuff, and there's a tribute on there to a guy named Mel Bibby, who was basically their special effects guy. And I didn't know this until I saw it, but it just looks to me like they got a lot more money and they spent a lot more money on effects and things like that. And when you watch that, they say, Craig Charles actually says that they actually didn't get a whole lot more money. It's just that he really knew what he was doing and putting things together and making it look really, really great with the money they had.
Making the best of what they had, yeah. That's
Yeah.
great. And it shows there's a big jump in the whole production value moving forward from this season.
Like you heard in the intro, Crichton is back. Blue Midget's been replaced by Starbug, which is a lot bigger and green. And like you said, we got new sets, new outfits for the crew. And where the old show had mostly a video look, this one has more of a film look.
Yeah, it's much more crisp.
Yeah.
They seem to move a little bit better. There's no blurring or anything like that. And especially the lighting shows up much better. I know that was a big jump between Series 1 and 2 with the lighting and the color always seemed to be a little bit more vibrant in 2. And now we kind of fall into what I expect to see, basically from the rest of the run from this time forward. They've really refined the look of the show at this point. And there's minor improvements and changes as we move forward, but it's kind of like when Star Trek II got a makeover and Starfleet really kind of started to look a little bit more militaristic, and they kind of went with that for the rest of the film series. And we kind of got that same overhaul at this point where we kind of start to see consistency moving forward as far as what they look like and just how sloppy is Dave and, that kind of stuff.
As for the story, this is one of those classic episodes that you could just watch over and over. To me, in fact, the whole season is. But if you're looking for an episode to introduce a potential new fan to, this is really a good one to start them off with. There's a lot of classic gags and lines in this episode. Almost every scene has something in it that's funny and memorable. But
paced very well, and it doesn't.
It is,
any place. Like it has a few key moments in a lot of the scenes, but as far as transitioning from one to the next, there's not a lot of downtime. There's not a lot of just places where people are sitting around and talking like in previous series. The action moves forward.
Basically, Crichton and Rimmer crash land on the planet, and later Lister and the cat follow them there. But everything that happens is backwards. People talk backwards. Events happen backwards. Like the newspaper article that Crichton reads.
What's the year? 3991.
No, it's 1993. It's backwards. I'll switch to reverse mode. 3 brought to life in bank raid. A masked man with a sawn-off shotgun sucked bullets out of 2 cashiers and a security guard in a South London bank tomorrow. The armed raider then forced terrified staff to accept £10,000, which he demanded they place in the bank's vaults. The man, Michael Ellis, completed a 15-year prison sentence for the crime 2 years ago.
So what was your favorite scene or line, or both?
So one of the things that's different here about Series 3 is they have switched over to a whole lot more physical comedy. And I think this episode really kind of plays up on that, as well as the gag of doing everything backwards. So when they're down in the beers backwards, and, you see the beer all unspilling from Dave's shirt up back into the glass, and they pass the mugs back, and the mugs are then drained back into the cask. Like, I'm a big fan of those kind of scenes. Not so much the backwards eating. That's a little disgusting, but I think they really played up on that a lot.
Yeah, that was gross. My favorite scene was at the very end, and it makes me just cackle every time I see it, is...
The Cats in the Bushes.
Yeah, they're going back to the ship, and they're like, "Where's the cat?" I was like, oh God, I forgot to tell him. And he comes out of the bushes like with a look of like shock and horror because
Air is standing straight up like any cats would.
He went to use the bathroom and did not realize it was backwards. That was pretty funny.
One of the other nice funny gags is the cat takes the money, and it's like he looks like he's being charitable, but from his way around, he's just taking all the money. And Santa Claus, what a bastard!
All right, up next, Marooned.
When it gets to me, I mean the loneliness and all that, when it gets on top of me, it's my only means of escape. I mean, I know I'm not exactly a wizard on it. I know it's only got 5 strings and 3 of them a G. But through the whole of my life, I've never had anything to cling on to. No roots, no parents, no education.
No education?
I went to art college. All I've ever had is that guitar. It's the only thing for the whole of me miserable smacking life that hasn't walked out on me. Don't make me burn it.
Which aired November 21st, 1989, written by Rob Grant and Doug Naylor, and directed by Ed Bye. In another crash landing mishap, Lister and Rimmer run into a wormhole and are stranded on a frozen planet while Crichton and Kat search for them before it's too late for Lister. As I've said before, this is the very first episode of Red Dwarf I'd ever seen. It appeared late one Saturday night on my local PBS station, which is WNC Channel 4. Directly after Doctor Who, and it's still one of my favorite episodes. In fact, a little behind the scenes for you. When I'm watching these for the podcast, just like I did for Quest is a Quest, I take notes and I write down time codes so I can go back and record sound clips. Well, I hadn't seen this in a while, and I was so engrossed in it, I totally forgot to write down clips that I wanted to take.
Oh, I was going to think you were going to say exactly the opposite, that you wrote down every gag and everything. It's just like, oh, I love this episode so much. It's like I'm just basically going to reproduce the whole episode in clips on the show.
No, I totally got sucked into it, and then it was over, and I was like, oh, crap, I didn't write down anything. To me, this one just harkens back to the first 2 series where it's just Lister and Rimmer telling stories to each other and keeping each other company.
Yeah, and it really rides on the writing here, too, because you have to play off of that relationship.
Exactly. The difference is in this story, you can actually tell they've grown a lot closer, although neither one of them will admit it. But Rimmer is trying his best to keep Lister occupied and warm so that he doesn't freeze to death or starve.
There's the Mayday bit. I'm a big fan of that. It just shows the difference between the two of them, because Lister has the common sense to know where it comes from, and Rimmer just made it up his own interpretation in his head, and that's going to be good enough for the rest of the world. Why not?
There's an extra on the disc where it shows actually a couple of commercials they had when this actually came on the air the first time, and one of them is that clip with Mayday, on where he leans over and says, "Ascension Sunday, Ascension Sunday." But my favorite scene of this one, it was hard to pick one, but I guess it would be when Rimmer and Lister are swapping their virginity stories.
Tell me how you lost your virginity.
My what?
Talk to me.
How I lost it? Well, it was so long ago, Lister. I was so young and sexually precocious, I'm not sure I can remember.
Everyone can remember how they lost their virginity. It's just one of those things. Like everyone can remember where they were the day Cliff Richard was shot. or when the first woman landed on Pluto. Or when they installed that gigantic toupee over the Earth to cover the gap in the ozone layer. It's just one of those things you always remember.
Well, I don't. Good grief, you could hardly expect me to recall every single sexual liaison I've ever partaken of. What do you think I am, the memory man?
Rimmer, don't give me this. I want the truth.
The truth? There's not much to tell, really. I was always a bit of a fish out of water around women. Never know what to say to them. I never think I was very highly sexed, to be honest with you. I think it was all that school cabbage I was forced to eat as a boy. Still, the first time was with this girl I met at cadet school called Sandra. We did it in the back of my brother's car.
What was it like?
Brilliant. Incredible. Bentley V8 convertible. Walnut burr paneling. Marvellous machine, marvellous. So, come on, how do you lose yours?
Michelle Fisher. The 9th hole of Bootle Municipal Golf Course. Par 4, dogleg to the right, in the bunker behind the green.
You lost your virginity on a golf course? How'd you have the nerve?
It wasn't in the middle of the Ryder Cup or anything. It was midnight.
How old were you?
Oh, she was so good looking if she wanted. She could have got a job working behind the perfume counter at Lewis's. That's how gorgeous she was.
How old were you?
She just took all her clothes off and stood there in front of me completely naked. I was so excited I nearly dropped my skateboard.
Skateboard? How old were you?
12.
12? 12 years old? You lost your virginity when you were 12? 12? You can't have been a full member of the golf club then.
Absolutely. That's a great scene. My favorite is when Lister is speaking about how his guitar has kept him sane through the years. And that's another thing I forgot to bring up as far as the changes in the season. Series 1 and 2, Lister has a beat-up acoustic guitar. Now all of a sudden it's turned into a Gibson Les Paul. Yeah, so he has that. He's been using that to help occupy himself. When he's feeling really down, at least he still can play his guitar, no matter how badly it is.
I actually felt really bad for Rimmer for a change in this story. He sacrifices his wooden soldiers after he thinks Lister has sacrificed his guitar. But then he finds out that Lister actually cut out part of his camphor wood chest that his father had given him. And
it's all really silly anyway, because Rimmer's dead. He doesn't need a chest or dolls anymore.
Right.
And the fact that they brought him along on the Starbug in the first place, I don't know. That just seemed a little far-fetched too. But what can you do? It really built the whole tension in the story. You know, what's going to happen to Lister? What are they going to do? And it was a good payoff. So there's the writing shining through on this particular episode, absolutely. So one of the other funny lines was when the guitar is burning. I'm doing air quotes here, and no one can see that, of course. When the guitar is burning, Rimmer smells camphor wood. Oh, your guitar must have been made of camphor wood. It must have been priceless. You know, he doesn't quite get it until the actual reveal at the end of the episode that, no, you know, your buddy just cut a big hole in your chest. And they show the camera angle from through the hole, too. That's just perfect.
Yeah, that was a good shot.
Like a bunch of great visual gags in here, even though there's not a lot of the same kind of action built into the episode. But anyway, why does Rimmer have a sense of smell?
Yeah, that's something I didn't think about.
So that's one of those weird little sci-fi things that we just have to glaze over. That's one of those things like, okay, now he's a hologram with a sense of smell. He can't touch anything. He can't lift anything, but he can smell burning camphor wood. Next up, Polymorph.
This week's Red Dwarf contains scenes which are unsuitable for younger viewers and people of a nervous disposition. You have been warned.
Which aired November 28th, 1989, written by Rob Grant and Doug Naylor, and directed by Ed Bye. A genetically engineered, shape-shifting mutant infiltrates the ship and feeds off the negative emotions of the crew, leaving an apathetic Crichton, a hobo cat, a passive Rimmer, and a Lister that just wants to twat something. This episode has a disclaimer that says there's some questionable content, and you wonder what could they possibly do with questionable content. And I guess the first thing that you really start to wonder about is Crichton's groinal socket, where he's using his big phallic vacuum cleaner to clean things. You think that might be kind of questionable. But then after the polymorph infiltrates the bunk room and attacks Dave Lister, it starts to go downhill. Do you want to tell us about that scene, Brent?
This has got to be one of the funniest moments in the entire series of Red Dwarf to me, and it's my favorite scene in this one.
It's a solid laugh out loud scene every single time. Like,
I can't tell you how many times I've seen this, and I still laugh. But it's when the polymorph goes into Lister's quarters and shifts into a pair of Lister's boxers, which then begin to shrink when he puts them on. He starts screaming and telling Crichton to help him take them off. So he's down on the floor on his back, and Crichton's on top of him, and they're both just thrashing about trying to get him off. And Rimmer walks in and says, well, I can't say I'm totally surprised. It's so funny.
And then, like, even that, after that, there's some questionable special effects, like the polymorph changes into a snake, which is obviously just a big rubber snake that Dave is struggling with, and it looks so fake.
Yeah, and it's so cut in. It's so cut in. If you look at Lister's mouth, I mean, not Lister, if you look at Crichton's mouth during that scene, you hear him talking, but his mouth is closed.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I didn't notice that. I'll have to go back and check that out.
Yeah, I saw that, the warning, the disclaimer at the beginning, which is, was a little weird. It was also an American accent, which was also weird. I don't know what that was about. That's what I was going to ask you. If you thought it was really intended to be serious or just a gag.
Well, they used the same voice that they used for the disclaimer of the genetically engineered life form, storage pod thing. Mm-hmm. So the other thing I wanted to ask, I don't know if you noticed this, but was that voiceover the same guy that did the Crichton 2.0? Was that the same actor that you think that did that voiceover?
I'm not sure.
It was very menacing, like in a world where the bright is going to blow up, that kind of thing. So I'd invite people to go back and listen and see if that's the same actor that provided voice work for that other episode. But I don't think it was meant to be serious, but at the same time, that scene could have been questionable at tea time. I don't even know when Red Dwarf, what time of day that was broadcast. It seems to be a little bit more adult themed all around.
Yeah. There was also a Doctor Who actor in here. Did you catch her?
Was it the girl?
Her name is Frances Barber. She plays Jenny in this one. That was the girl that the polymorph pretends to be to get the cat. She was Madame Kavarian in Series 6 of Doctor Who. The eye patch lady.
She looked familiar, and I was just like, oh, okay, she's just a hot English chick. I can deal with that. That was actually my favorite scene because it's so well written because she just says everything to the cat that the cat absolutely wants to hear. And, you couldn't write a more perfect scene because it just so plays off of everything that is the cat. So that was my favorite for polymorph.
My favorite line was when they've all changed and they're figuring out how they're going to get rid of the polymorph. Rimmer is saying,
Crichton, what's your view? Don't be shy.
Well, I think we should send Lister in as a decoy. And while it's busy eating him alive, we can creep up on it unawares and blast it into the stratosphere.
Good plan. That's the best plan yet. Let it get knackered eating me to death, then you guys can just, catch it unawares.
Well, that's certainly an option, David, yes. But here's my proposal. Let's get tough. The time for talking is over. Call it extreme if you like, but I propose we hit it hard and hit it fast with a major, and I mean major, leaflet campaign.
That's a very memorable line. But of all the transformations, that's my least favorite is the transformation of Rimmer. I love what happens to all the rest of the characters. It just so accentuates parts of their personality that you wouldn't normally see. And I even think of Scruffy Cat in this episode. It's almost like a proto Dwayne Dibley. It's like where they started with this. And actually in Polymorph 2, I believe that when he gets attacked, he does become Dwayne Dibley at that point. So they were going along those lines.
This episode also has something that we will hear for the rest of the entire series. Space Corps directives. And Crichton has the very first one in this episode.
Oh, what about the Space Corps directive, which states it is our primary overriding duty to contact other life forms, exchange information, and wherever possible, bring them home?
What about the Rimmer directive, which states never tangle with anything that's got more teeth than the entire Osmond family?
So not exactly the same kind of Space Corps directive jokes we're going to get at in the future, but there's it's a good start.
Up next, Body Swap.
Auto-destruct sequence continued. Detonation in 5 seconds.
Sensational.
4.
Well done, Thick Face.
3.
What a brilliant plan.
2.
Just great.
1. Initiate self-destruct. Thank you for using autosave dispensing machines. Number 1 in quality.
What happened?
In taste.
It must have been wired up to the warning system, but not the bomb.
So where's the bomb?
We haven't got a bomb. I got rid of it ages ago.
Why didn't you say?
You never asked.
Fine. Terrific. But remember this. You're getting my underwear bill, buddy.
Which aired December 5th, 1989, written by Rob Grant and Doug Naylor, and directed by Ed Bye. In an effort to get Lister totally healthy, Rimmer persuades Lister to switch bodies with him, resulting in very heavy consequences. About 2 stone worth. I loved, right off the bat, the self-destruct scene. That was so hilarious.
Yeah, and we haven't even mentioned yet in this episode of the transference in character of Holly from our male character to the female character. And she's totally on board in this scene. It's like, okay, the whole ship's going to blow up. You could run around and scream and die, or you could sit down and relax and die, or you could do nothing and die. But, you know, I'm not even going to bother to tell you that there is no bomb. The ship's not going to even blow up, but we're just going to, you know, blare a bunch of alarms that make you think it is. She's just off the pot completely.
Actually, that leads into my favorite scene, so I'll go ahead and say that. But Lister had to do a mind swap with a superior officer to stop the self-destruct sequence. And Crichton puts Lister's brain on a little disc, which the cat accidentally drops into his tea. And the look on his face is just priceless.
Yeah, it's like the total mischievous cat with its paw in the canary's cage kind of look. You know, it's like, oh, did I do that? So also in that scene, there's Dave's brain face, getting his brain sucked out, and he does the one eyeball cocked kind of thing, and he's just so perfect with his facial expressions in that. I was really kind of off-put by the lip sync, though, that Dave's voice is in Rimmer's body and vice versa.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. I wondered if if you thought the studio audience could hear the piped-in audio, or if the actors were just saying their lines as normal. And maybe that's why they switched costumes, so the audience would know who was supposed to be who.
If they did that, wouldn't all the lines have to be pre-recorded and they were just miming them then? I would think that'd be a post-production thing.
Yeah, it probably was.
They would go back and re-record the dialogue over top of, I don't know. It's hard to say. So, if you audience members know out there how they pulled that off in front of the studio audience, do let us know. My favorite scene is when Crichton is feeling guilty about chloroforming Dave to under Rimmer's instructions so that he can get a body back.
I told you, he's agreed. He's perfectly happy about the situation.
Well, then why did you make me chloroform him, and why did he struggle so?
Look, I'm in charge, Crichton. I'll take full responsibility.
Oh, but sir...
Science lab pronto.
Oh.
If he comes round again, give him another whack.
There's that cool chase scene, too, between Starbug and the Blue Midget. It looks like models on a platform, but for a TV show, that's pretty darn good.
Yeah, it was. It looked great. My favorite line of this was when the cat is playing Scrabble with Lister, who's in Rimmer's body.
That letter, that letter, that letter. There.
Hey, I got you now, buddy. Jozxyqk.
That's not a word.
It's a cat word.
Jozxyqk.
That's not how you pronounce it.
What's it mean?
It's a sound you make when you get your sexual organs trapped in something.
It's in the dictionary?
Well, it could be. If you're reading in the nude and you close the book too quick.
I guess overall, though, of 6 great episodes, this is probably my least favorite of all 6 in this series.
Yeah, I'd go with that if I had to pick one. I mean, I still like it, but if I had to pick one, this would probably be it.
Next up, Time Slides.
Lovely service, Lister. You should have come. Most uplifting. What's wrong with you? Ah, it's November. Nearly time for your bath.
Please, just spare me the good mood. I just can't handle it right now, okay?
What happened to you?
I'm sick of it, that's what. I'm just totally sick of it.
Sick of what?
I'm sick of you and your silly green suits. I'm sick of your stupid flared nostrils. I'm sick of the way you always smile when you're being insulted. I'm sick of the cat. I'm sick of Holly. I'm sick of you. I'm sick of me. And that's for Crichton. I'm sick of him. I'm sick of this ship. I'm sick of this life. I'm just sick of it.
You're unhappy, aren't you?
which aired December 12th, 1989, written by Rob Grant and Doug Naylor, and directed by Ed Bye. Crichton's photographic development fluid has mutated and transforms developed slides into time portals, which the crew can enter. And that one starts with my favorite scene, actually, because it's when Crichton is on his own in the developing lab, and he's listening to some music, and he's on his own, and no one's watching. He doesn't have to serve anyone, and he's just kind of rocking out and doing some air guitar, and you don't see that from this stuffy character before this. You know, you can see that, yes, he does kind of have his own personality and his own way of things when people aren't looking or expecting him to do anything.
To me, this is one of my personal favorite concepts in the whole show. I mean, can you imagine how awesome it would be to be able to walk into an old photograph and interact with the people in it? You know, you could visit loved ones that had passed on, or meet famous people, or just relive a great time without changing history at all. Not that you'd want to live your life in the past, but it would be really cool to try it out once in a while.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, they even go so far, it's a great concept that it was used in the Doctor Who 50th anniversary. You know, it's the same concept with the paintings.
That's right.
Little captured piece of time. And, you know, in this way, it's a photograph, but here you can walk into the photograph, interact with the people inside of it, and walk back out again.
Yeah, I totally didn't think about that. You're right. And like we said at the beginning, at your intro, we have special guest star Adolf Hitler, which was funny. But just as a side note, I was in my car watching this one, and I was typing notes into my phone because I had left my notebook at home. And, you know, Hitler is probably the most hated person in all of humanity, and with good reason. But I thought it was really strange that my autocorrect on my phone would not capitalize the name Hitler.
Weird.
Very weird. Anyway, that opening scene with the cat trying to cheer Lister up is classic. I love the golf game. And Cat's like, yeah, and then plays a tape of recorded applause.
And it's like tabletop golf or something like that. I've never seen anything like that, but I'm sure it's fun.
And then the junior angler game that he holds up. If you look on the DVD menu when you're going to pick your episode, it's like 6 vaults. There's 3 on one side and 3 on the other. And whenever you pick an episode, the vault opens and you can kind of see in there for a second before the next one comes up. And if you look really close on this one, I noticed it, when you open the vault, you can see the junior angler game in there.
Nice.
On the menu. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Very cool. So there is some timey-wimey stuff going on in this episode, too, because they do find out that, yes, because of the tension sheet, they can change the past. And tension sheet's kind of funny. It's just like a whole stupid thing. They call it packing paper. I think we, call it bubble wrap here in the United States. And it's just cool that you can go back and he can talk to Thicky Holden. Is it Thicky Holden or Holden?
Thicky Holden.
Thicky Holden. And they change it. Lister gets disgustingly rich, and Rimmer makes it his life goal to change the past so that he can continue to torment his friends.
Yeah, also Craig Charles' brother is in here. He's the one that plays the younger Lister.
Oh, he's the crypto-fascist.
Yeah.
Saying crypto-fascist about everything. And he writes that great guy. Song,
There's also a scene where later on where Lister is rich and he's going back to his mansion and they play a song where it's just cash, I want money.
He's got a watch and a firefax so that he can correlate his facts. He's got cash, he's got money, he's got cash, he's got money.
That's Craig Charles singing.
Oh, cool. So I like Lister's staff. They cater to his every whim, but they all think he's an idiot. It's hilarious. They kind of roll their eyes at every one of his requests. So Rimmer's interference changes time and then changes it back. And except there's one little change, that Rimmer's not dead. Rimmer's not dead. You think, hey, maybe they'll change things. They'll move the series forward under a different format. But no. All of a sudden something explodes and Rimmer's no longer living. And it's therefore a hologram at the beginning of the next episode. Is there any setup for what explodes?
I don't think so.
Got to be some fan retcon out there that explains all that. So we just got to dig a little deeper. Yeah. Send us your favorite retcon for that moment, please.
My favorite scene in here was the one you were just talking about, where Rimmer gets his body back. And it's funny because the audience reaction was actually the same as mine first time I saw that. Because they all start cheering. It's like, yay, he's real again. And I was like, awesome, you know. Of course, you know, like you said, a couple of seconds later, he gets blown up and they hit the big reset button.
And you noticed right away that there was no H on his forehead after the time stream changed, right?
Not at first. Because as soon as she said that, you know, something's changed. And then I noticed.
Oh, okay. Because, I mean, I noticed right away, and I almost was, like, looking to see if it was a blooper or, you know, just like a missed makeup kind of thing. And then, no, it was part of the plot. Okay, yeah, all right.
And my favorite line in here was when he's talking about Thicky Holden. That whole scene is hilarious, but where he says he thought a glacier was a person that fixed windows.
Okay, yeah, so favorite line.
We could go to Dallas in November 1963, stand on the grassy knoll and shout, "Duck!"
Which is a little prophetic because they do end up on the grassy knoll at some point here in the show's future.
Yo, I'm in the photograph.
Excuse me, can you stand aside, please? We're trying to take a photograph.
I'm actually in the photograph.
Excuse me, you're blocking the shot.
I'm actually here. I'm at a smacking wedding.
All right, now on to our last story, The Last Day.
Well, it's all very sad, Lister, but what can we do?
Sad. It's sick. He's been programmed to believe in an android heaven so that he doesn't get stroppy when it comes to turn-off time. So he accepts a lifetime of getting the short end of the stick because he thinks there's going to be some big reward at the end.
Well, at least he gets 24 hours notice. That's more than most of us get. All most of us get is mind that bus, what bus, splat. How's he taking it?
He just carries on doing his stupid smacking duties.
Maybe I should talk to him. Maybe he needs a bit of counselling.
You?
I used to be in the Samaritans.
I know, for one morning.
Well, I couldn't take any more.
I don't blame you. You spoke to 5 people and they all committed suicide. I wouldn't mind, but one was a wrong number.
Which aired December 19th, 1989, written by Rob Grant and Doug Naylor, and directed by Ed Bye. Crichton's warranty has expired and his replacement is on the way. Will this be his last day? Watching these in order when they were released on VHS back in the 90s, you really didn't know what was going to happen. You didn't have any kind of casting news over here or anything like, just like Doctor Who was. So you didn't know if anybody was leaving or being added or, you know, so it was a surprise, first of all, to see Crichton rejoin the crew at the beginning. And then when you get to the last episode, you're really not sure whether or not it's going to be his last, you know, is he just back for one season? So, I thought it was really perfect to place this episode at the end of the series to kind of play on that aspect.
Yeah, make you wonder, like, this really could be happening.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's why they did it. I mean, it makes his future uncertain, especially, you know, since he started back in the series, you're not sure if he just came back for that series. So, it's a good episode.
Right at the top, Dave is being served waffles and completely says, no, don't do it, and Crichton throws it all away. And then as soon as Crichton walks out, Dave walks over to the garbage can and starts scooping all of his breakfast back into his hat and starts eating it, and then he has to put the hat back on his head. That's a great, you know, little piece of physical comedy that's going on there. Of course, we can't show it on a podcast, but,
right.
You know, that maybe people will hear what we're talking about and be like, he puts his waffles in his hat? And then they'll be like, oh, okay, this is Red Dwarf. That's normal.
My favorite scene in this one was the promo video for Crichton's replacement model, where he heats up the chicken with his laser vision and then he breaks a brick with his crotch. That was awesome.
Totally. And the replacement model, when he finally shows up, he's basically like a cross between the Terminator and Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Yeah.
He's a total badass.
We talked last show about Chris Berry doing impressions, and he does one again in this one where he impersonates Crichton.
That's classic.
Yeah, there's also a really small bit of foreshadowing to Series 7. That scene where they're talking about their moms, and Lister says, oh, he never knew who his parents were.
Because he got left in a box under a pool table.
Mom. I never had a mom.
Hey, it's all right, buddy. It's all part of being drunk.
You've been through the happy stage, now you're going through the melancholy stage.
Oh, everybody should have a mum.
I never had a mum neither.
Well, you can all have mine. Everyone else did.
I never had a mum either.
Oh, for God's sake, what's wrong with everyone?
Why didn't you have a mum?
It's abandoned.
Abandoned?
6 weeks old. Some cardboard box underneath the pool table. Just abandoned in this pub.
Oh, how could anybody do that?
Never found out. Never found out.
Right.
But he didn't actually use the word, is it Ouroboros?
Yeah. So later on in our July episode, we'll be covering one called Ouroboros or Ouroboros, however you say that.
I like Ouroboros. That one rolls off the tongue the best.
Yeah, it does, which deals with that. I don't want to spoil it in case you haven't gotten that far in your Red Dwarf watching, but it's a really good one. I have a friend I used to work with, and that was her favorite episode.
That one's a high concept episode, but yeah, like you said, we'll talk about that in July. So some of my other favorites from this, Crichton's talking about how he's going to shut down and all of his mental functions will stop, and then maybe he can get a job as a disc jockey.
That one hit a little too close to home.
Well, that's why, I brought it up because, we like fancying ourselves as radio announcers, but, radio announcers are like, as Mike O'Mara says, one step above circus performers.
That's right.
And then there's Rimmer's line about, other people when they die, look out for that bus. What bus splat? Yeah. That's one of my favorites. But the line that I picked for my favorite was...
the only truly terrible thing is that, as my adopted owner, you have to die with me. You what? Joke. Deadpan mode.
Crichton actually tells a joke, and it works, and it's funny. And New Holly, yay or nay?
I like her.
I like her. I like the character. I like the writing that continues with her, but I still like the other Holly.
I do too, but as much as I liked him, she did a good job of replacing him, so I didn't really miss him that much.
Yeah, he's not gone, just different, that's all.
So that's Series 3. Lots of changes, as we mentioned before, but most of them were very good changes. Although I'm a hardcore fan of the first two series, Series 3 contains like some of my favorite classic episodes. And like I was saying before about the budget, they did such a great job working with what they had and making this look like 10 times better than the first two series.
I can second that. This is a big step up for the whole series, and I'm really looking forward to digesting all of Series 4 now. So this episode is going to air here towards the end of March. If anyone's listening in the Rochester area here in New York, please come to Podfest and see me with the people from my other podcast, The Paul Towsley Show. We're going to be doing a 15-minute podcast in front of a live audience, and that'll be fun. And that'll be kind of our, not audition, but our introduction to the rock podcast community. I'm really looking forward to going and shaking hands and kissing babies and that kind of stuff and meeting the other local area podcast nerds that broadcast from their mom's basement.
Their mom's basement.
Yeah.
All right, coming up next month, Holly becomes a genius, Ace Rimmer makes his first appearance, and Winnie the Pooh refuses a blindfold.
All on the next edition of Tongue Tied, a Red Dwarf podcast.
Say goodbye, Paul.
Goodbye, Paul.
Thanks for listening. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to Tongue Tied, a Red Dwarf podcast. Red Dwarf, the song Tongue Tied, and all associated material are trademarks of Grant Naylor Productions. No infringement is intended. You can email the podcast at tonguetiedpodcast@yahoo.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/tonguetiedpodcast. And follow us on Twitter at tonguetiedpod. For the boys from the Dwarf, this is Paul Towsley saying,
Gadurble, diggle, doggle, niggle, foggle, nibble, nay. I'm trying to say I'm tongue-tied, tongue-tied, whenever you are near me. I'm mummy, 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 whenever you're around.
You've reached that age, Listy. When you're younger, you can eat what you like, drink what you like, and still climb into your 26-inch waist trousers and zip them closed. Then you reach that age, 24, 25, your muscles give up, they wave a little white flag, and without any warning at all, you're suddenly a fat bastard.
I didn't come here looking for trouble. I just came to do the Red Dwarf Shuffle. He's smart. He's smart.
ROCpodcasts.com.